Good afternoon, CNT Collectibles. I am C, and today I just want to do not a response, but I just want to add my thoughts to a video that our friend Sports Cards Anonymous did on Monday on how buying goats for the long term is not a good investment over that period of time relative to some other things. And I don't think there is a right or a wrong answer here. I just think more information is always beneficial to the conversation, and perhaps he wanted to get a little bit of discussion going around this, and more thoughts are not necessarily a bad thing. So I just want to throw in my 2 cents here and talk a little bit about long-term investings and how alternative assets like sports cards can fit into a broader portfolio. So first thing we need to do probably is define what the long-term is. And the IRS defines it as 1 year. This is when your short-term capital gains turn into long-term capital gains. I think for most people, realistically, longer term is 3 to 5 years out. What I tell people is if you have a large expense coming up in the next 3 to 5 years, you don't want to take a lot of risk with it. But if you start to get 5, 10 years out from something, college savings for a kid, retirement is the big one. Everyone will have to do that one. Then you can start to take on additional risk. And so when you're building a portfolio, you start off, when you're getting started, you're starting off with probably mutual funds, ETFs, something in your 401k plan that's easy. But as you grow, you start to branch out, and those mutual funds start to get diversified. Okay, you start to look at large cap stocks, small cap stocks, international, emerging markets, value, growth, and your bonds start to become not just a bond fund, but now you're getting to treasuries, corporates, preferreds, convertibles, all that kind of stuff. And as it gets bigger and bigger, you add additional asset classes. And what you're trying to do is break up the correlation. You don't want everything moving in one way or another in the same direction. You want non-correlated assets to kind of offset, the dips that the market will tend to have once in a while. We've all been old enough to remember those, right? Just a year ago. So, but if you were somewhat diversified, treasuries did really, really well in that environment last year. Stocks didn't, but bonds did. And so if you were diversified, you got through that in one piece. And then really the key to diversification, two keys to long-term investing. You have the diversification, but then you also have rebalancing. Okay, and so rebalancing is basically you have two stocks here. You have stock A, stock B, and they represent 50% of your portfolio. And say stock A does really, really well 1 year, and stock B doesn't keep up, comes down just a little bit. What you do is bring them back into balance by rebalancing on an annual basis. You're selling high, you're buying low, you're bringing them back into balance, and do that over time. Some people do it quarterly. I think annually is probably fine. Then you're not getting out of balance, and so sports cards have been brought into the investment mix, the diversification mix. This isn't a new thing at all. So when you get to, Dakota made some great points here. If you're buying these things and you're never going to sell them, you're not using for intended purpose, you're a collector. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm a collector. With my retirement plan, sports cards, my Star Wars collection is not part of that. That's something that's going to go to the kids, hopefully. And when I no longer have any use for it, and it's not fair to count that as a long-term investment asset. Okay. Now there are people that might have that part of their portfolio, and this has been done for a long, long time, where it is part of their retirement plan. And so when you get to a certain amount, you will set aside 5-10% of your portfolio, whatever it is, for speculation. Okay. Basically, if you lose all of that money, it's not going to upset your overall retirement plan. So you can stand to take some additional risk for it. And typically it'll be non-correlated assets. So you could have classic automobiles are a big one, fine wine, art, gold, frozen concentrated orange juice, all that stuff. So when you get to these things, you're looking for something that doesn't necessarily perform like the S&P. You want it to be non-correlated, but what people are looking for are hard assets, something physical, something tangible that they can get their hands on. If everything really goes to hell, then they've got something. Now, are sports cards the best way to do that? It's still paper. It's not terribly useful. Don't imagine this being a currency at any point in the zombie apocalypse. So from that perspective, probably not. I mean, a car might be more, has metal parts. It's used for transportation. Classic car might have a lot more use. Wine, if you're just gonna say to heck with it and drink it all and it's delicious, that's fine. But there's a reason that people are buying the best. Okay. And so this is where it comes into buying the goats of sports cards. It's not just any sports card, it's the goats. And so there's a reason people don't collect like Joel Gott. I love Joel Gott, all right? But they're getting Screaming Eagle wine, something that's a bit more pricey and will age, Chateau Rothschild or something like that. So when you're looking at automobiles, they're not collecting Pintos. Some people do. God bless them. My parents had one when I was little. That's fine. But they're doing the Mustangs, and they're doing the old muscle cars and the classic cars, things that are a little bit higher level. So when people are doing sports cars and putting a lot of money into, this is why you see the Jordans and the Mantles and those types of cards attract a lot of the money, because those have the long-term value, the long-term relevance, I should say. The value can go up and down just like anything else, but the relevance will always be there. The demand will be higher for those than they will be for anything else. And so in theory, they should protect you a little bit on some of that downside. It's like buying the blue chip. So when you're looking at long-term investments like cards and alternative assets, you're not necessarily looking for S&P like returns. If that's what you're looking for, go buy an S&P index fund. It's going to be a heck of a lot cheaper than eBay fees. So do something like that. But when you're getting into non-correlated assets, then you're just looking for something to zig when everything else is zagging, hopefully, or hold up a little bit better when those periods of volatility come. So then you have the people, I think, that are shorter term. Their investments are used to flip and buy and then buy more sports cars, and that's fine. That's a different thing. But for the long term, the way I define this, going towards some sort of long-term goal. All right, so when we're looking at cards as a long-term asset, a couple of things we want to be careful of, or be aware of. Not careful of. There's nothing to be careful of here. Again, everyone's got their own opinion. When we look at things on a linear time frame, you're just looking at the price. Very few people express things in terms of price over a long period of time. They talk about 2x, 3x, 10x. And you shouldn't do that either. It's just say 10 times, all right? It's not that much harder than x, not an additional syllable or anything like that. And so when you're expressing things in percentage terms over a long period of time, use a percentage scale. And you can see that the peaks and valleys are a little bit more pronounced, and you can get a better idea, and you can start to manage your risk better. And this is where this ties in just a little bit. So, but comparing this to the S&P over a long period of time, that's just going to kind of cover everything up here, isn't it? Let me move it over here for the time being. So you can see the S&P since 2004, which is as far back as the card ladder charts go. The S&P is up 273%. Okay, so this is coming out of the tech collapse, which ended in March of 2003. The Nasdaq collapse. The S&P held up okay. There's a lot of things that did just fine, but so this is not like from a high level or anything. This is actually coming out from a pretty decent low level, and then you had a pretty nice climb till the Great Financial Crisis, and then a dip down to that 666 low in March of 2009, and then you've had a nice run here. You had last year, the whatever they're deciding to call it, it's not COVID, it was hedge funds blowing up, make no mistake about that. But you had a really nice run, and so the cumulative returns since 2004 till now is 273%. When we look at Joe Montana PSA 9 since 2004, from $300 up to the current price of nearly $3,000, you can see that's over 1,000% return. So cards over the long term do work. That's an alternative asset class that has worked. Now, there's times that it doesn't work. So again, with the rebalancing, this is investment management. So when you're investing, you're not forgetting, okay? Doesn't mean just buy and hold and leave it alone. If you're doing something like that, then sports cards are not the way to go. I completely agree. So if you start looking at my preferred thing for the long term is stocks that pay dividends. You want something with some sort of income stream. Dividend-paying stocks with rising dividends do really, really well in the long term, and I think those are a great tool for retirement. If you look at Altria over the last 25 years, if you reinvested their dividends, that's been a better performer than Apple over that period of time, and Apple's been a monster. So those dividends, I think it was Albert Einstein that said compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe, and he was a pretty smart guy. So, but when you get into things like commodities, again, gold, cards, things of that nature, just pure price action, then it's about managing risk, okay? And that's a big, so the keys to investing are not the management of returns, but it is about the management of risk, okay? And so then you really need to be somewhat active with it. So saying buy and hold, this actually worked really, really well, but you're at a period here where you've got these low volume spikes, which I talk about on my Monday videos, and I could see this thing coming back down, to that, call it $1,600 or something like that, right in this area here. So you do have to manage the risks. So when you see these low volume spikes, you take them off the table. There's a lot of things we can do. I cover that more in my Friday show. I'm not going to do a lot of that here today, but I just wanted to talk about again why sports cards and, again, collectibles fit into a long-term investment portfolio, it's because they are somewhat non-correlated. They are hard assets. No one's producing any more of them. Topps isn't making any more Joe Montana rookie cards. Kenner's not pumping out any more 21 back Boba Fett's or anything like that. So that's it. So it's a hard asset. It's fixed. So in theory, it should hold its value over time. Again, you can look at the the whatever mini financial deal in 2016. It dipped in 2009. You had this spike up here, $250. It went down to $234. So I think it's actually a little bit higher here. But again, we like to look at the cluster. So it took a hit, but it held in relatively stable to everything else. But in percentage terms, it dove just a little bit. But then it's had a nice run here. So this is, again, probably more of a gift. So this recent run up is what did a lot of the damage. But you're still looking at a pretty decent return. Not S&P level return, but that's how it goes sometimes with these non-correlated assets, and this is why it's important to rebalance. Okay, so let's say you have a Michael Jordan card, you have a $100,000 portfolio, and you buy a Michael Jordan card. You say, I want to risk $10,000, and this is last year or two ago, and you buy a $10,000 PSA 9 Michael Jordan card, and next thing you know, your portfolio is $200,000, and Michael Jordan accounts for $100,000 of its half. You want to do your rebalance and sell that Jordan if this is a long-term investment, and get your speculation position back down from that 50% level down to 5 or 10% and buy something else. So that's where the risk management comes into play. So I would never advocate just buying and holding over the longer period of time. But as a percentage of the, you have to manage it. But as a percentage of the overall portfolio, there's a reason that people have always done things like this. Now, as the money supply has expanded, people started to move away from art and wine and all that kind of stuff, and they were buying Bitcoin and sports cards. You have to invent additional asset classes. So that's another problem in itself here. But for the most part, buying and holding cards, there's a reason for that. Don't compare it to the S&P because that's not what they're there for the most part. You're looking for non-correlation, and the GOATs have held up better than a lot of these other cards over time. Now, in the shorter term, with speculation, news flow, some of those lower price cards can do really, really well. A card that comes out for $3 goes to 30. It's like that's a pretty good move as well. That's like this going from 300 to 3,000. But yeah, so there are always going to be examples, but over the longer term, there will be demand for these harder paper assets of the best of the best. So I think maybe you get my point, and maybe I'm not missing anything. So I'm not disagreeing with anything you said. I'm just trying to add a little bit to the conversation here. How I see some of these investments. And again, I don't consider investments. I consider them collectibles because I'm not going to use them for investment purposes. But the people that are looking at this a little differently. They're not trying to get market level returns out of it. These are just it's non-correlated stuff that they're hoping holds value over time, that it will be something tangible that they can hold on to. So that's what I got for you. I hope you guys have a great day. I've got a couple mega boxes of the Topps Heritage coming in finally from Target. We'll open those tonight, post it tomorrow, and then we'll have our Friday chart show. So hopefully you'll join me for that. Take care. Bye now.